Welcome to Zoe Stories. My mother's hypnosis experiment went wrong. Now I'm her daughter. My name is Jason, and I'm 18 years old. Growing up, I always felt like I was just another average guy trying to figure things out in the world. My mother, however, has always been anything but average. A psychologist with a fascination for hypnosis and the human mind, she often got lost in her experiments, testing out new theories on willing participants. I never thought I'd be one of those participants. That is, until the day she asked me to help her with a new experiment. It sounded harmless at first, just another one of her weird ideas. Hypnosis designed to change someone's perception of themselves. At first, I didn't think much of it. After all, I trusted her. But when I agreed, I didn't anticipate the consequences of what she was attempting. The moment she put me under, something went horribly wrong. Instead of simply tweaking my thoughts, the hypnosis transformed my reality. I woke up to find my body completely changed. No longer was I the Jason I knew. I had become my mother's daughter. My appearance, my voice, my very identity had been rewritten. Now, I am trapped in this unfamiliar form, trying to piece together who I am and whether there's a way to reverse the transformation. The question that lingers, what if I can't go back to being Jason? What if this is who I am now, forever? What's at stake is not just my body, but my sense of self and the life I thought I knew. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, my hands trembling as they traced the delicate curves of my face, my new face. The face of a girl. My hair was longer, flowing over my shoulders in soft waves, and my eyes, they weren't mine anymore. They were bigger, softer, with lashes that fluttered like a butterfly's wings. The person looking back at me wasn't Jason. It was someone else. Someone I didn't know. Someone I didn't want to be. I ran my fingers through my hair again, trying to make sense of it all. My heart pounded, and a wave of nausea hit me as I collapsed onto the edge of the tub. I couldn't breathe. The world around me felt so foreign. I could hear my mother's voice calling me from the other room, but I couldn't respond. I didn't know who I was anymore. How could this happen? I had trusted her. My own mother. I never thought that a simple hypnosis session would change my entire life. I kept trying to tell myself it was temporary, just a mistake, that it would wear off once I woke up. But the more I looked at myself, the more I realized that this wasn't a dream. It was real, and I was stuck in it. My mind raced, questioning every possibility. What if I couldn't go back? What if this wasn't just an accident, but something permanent? And then I thought about the future. I had dreams, plans, but how could I pursue any of them now? Who would I be in this new life? Would anyone recognize me? Would I still be Jason inside? Or would I fade away, becoming her, my mother's daughter, in every way? The worst part was the fear of being lost, of losing myself completely. There was a part of me that wanted to scream, to beg her to fix it, but there was another part, a smaller, weaker part, that wondered if maybe this new life could be okay. Could I adapt? Could I find a way to be happy in this new body, this new identity? The idea of being trapped in a stranger's life was terrifying, but something deep inside of me longed to believe it wasn't all lost. Maybe this change could bring something good, something I hadn't anticipated. But I had to make a choice. And I wasn't sure which path to take. Would I fight to get back to who I was, or would I embrace this new life, despite the fear that clung to every part of me? I sat on the edge of my bed, my hands clenched in my lap as I stared at the wall. The room felt suffocating. Every corner seemed to press in on me, as if it knew I couldn't escape. I had spent the past few hours trying to get my thoughts together, but they were a tangled mess. Should I tell someone? Could I even explain this? No one would understand. Not really. I picked up my phone, my fingers hovering over the screen. Annabelle. She had been my best friend for years, and I trusted her more than anyone. But how could I explain this to her? How could I explain that my mother, in her desperation to help me, had turned me into someone else, someone I didn't recognize? Before I could decide, my phone buzzed. A message from Annabelle. You okay? You've been distant all day. The words hit me like a punch in the stomach. How could I tell her what had happened? What would she think? Would she even believe me? I thought about all the times I'd confided in her, all the moments of laughter and comfort. But now, nothing felt certain anymore. I wasn't the same person she knew. I wasn't even sure who I was anymore. I let the phone slip from my hand onto the bed and buried my face in my hands, swallowing down the lump in my throat. My emotions were all over the place. Anger, confusion, fear. Part of me wanted to run, to leave this house, to disappear somewhere far away from everything that had happened. But where would I go? The fear of facing the world as someone else paralyzed me. I stood up, pacing the room, my thoughts running in circles. I had never been one to sit still in moments like these. When things felt out of control, I needed to move, to act. But there was nothing I could do. There was no magic fix. No way to reverse it. I was stuck in this new skin, this new life. The door opened, and I heard my mother's soft footsteps before she appeared in the doorway. Her face was a mask of concern. "Jason," she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "How are you feeling?" I wanted to scream at her, to tell her how messed up everything was, but I bit my lip instead. My throat was dry. My hands shook again. "How am I feeling?" I repeated, my voice cracking. "How am I supposed to feel?" "You've ruined my life, Mom." Her face faltered for a moment, guilt flickering across her features, but she stepped closer, her hands outstretched. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I thought it could help. I thought." "Help?" I cut her off, my chest tight. "How is this helping? You've turned me into a girl, Mom. This isn't a joke. I don't know how to fix this. I don't even know who I am anymore." She recoiled as if I had slapped her. I watched her, torn between anger and sorrow. She looked so helpless, so lost, like she had just realized the full weight of what she'd done. "I'm sorry, Jason. I didn't mean for it to go this far." I closed my eyes, letting out a shaky breath. This was the moment I had to decide. I couldn't keep running from it. My life had already changed. The question was whether I would fight it or try to find peace in this new reality. Just as I was about to respond, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a message from Annabelle. It was a picture. I frowned, unlocking my phone, and my breath caught in my throat. It was a picture of me, no, of her, posted online. My mother had taken it earlier today. It was a candid shot, a smile frozen on my new face. And the caption, "Meet my daughter, Jason." I stared at the screen, a cold shiver crawling up my spine. How had she done this without asking me? How had she so casually shared this moment, this disaster, with the world? My heart raced, panic rising in my chest. What did this mean? The whole world could see me now. Would they believe I was still Jason? Or would they only see the girl my mother had created? I looked up at my mom, my voice trembling. "You posted this?" I whispered, barely able to get the words out. She froze, a panicked expression flickering in her eyes. I thought it would help. I thought people would be understanding." I shook my head, feeling the walls close in. This was no longer just about me. It was about the world seeing me as someone else. Would I ever get the chance to be Jason again? Or had I lost him forever? And just as the full weight of it all crashed down on me, another message popped up on my phone. This one was from Annabelle. "Jason, we need to talk." I saw the picture. What the hell happened? The room seemed to spin as I read the words. The truth was out. And there was no going back. I stared at Annabelle's message, my heart pounding in my chest. She had seen the photo. She had seen me as her. My stomach churned. The world was watching, and I was trapped. I couldn't hide anymore. There was no pretending. No way to avoid it. The question that hung in the air, suffocating me, was simple. What now? I glanced at my mother, standing nervously in the doorway, her eyes pleading for forgiveness. "Jason, please. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought this would help, that it would fix everything." I could hear the desperation in her voice, but it didn't ease the knot in my chest. She hadn't fixed anything. She had shattered everything I thought I knew about myself. But as much as I wanted to scream, to fight, to demand that everything be undone, I couldn't ignore the reality that was creeping in like a dark fog. This was happening, whether I accepted it or not. I opened my messages to Annabelle again. Her words were blunt, but beneath the surface, I knew there was a mix of concern and curiosity. I could almost hear her voice, the confusion lacing her tone. She was my best friend, but would she still be after all this? Would she understand? With a shaky breath, I typed a response, my fingers hovering over the keys. The decision felt too big, too permanent. Would I go to her, tell her everything? Could I risk the chance that she might turn her back on me? Or would I hide in the shadows of this new life, pretending I was okay with what had happened? Finally, I hit send. We need to talk. I didn't know what would happen next, but there was no turning back now. The transformation was slow at first, like an unsettling pull I couldn't escape. I could feel it in the air, in the way people looked at me. At first, the changes were subtle, a slight shift in posture, a new way I caught my reflection in the mirror. But the more time passed, the more undeniable it became. It wasn't just my outward appearance that was changing. It was everything. The first time I looked in the mirror after the hormone treatment started taking effect, I barely recognized the person staring back at me. The face was mine, but there was something different about it. Softer. More delicate. I traced my fingers across my jawline, feeling the subtle curve where sharp angles used to be. My skin, once rough and weathered from years of sports, had softened, taking on a smoother, almost luminous texture. The changes were small, but undeniable. My chest tightened with anxiety as I watched my reflection. The first signs were there, barely perceptible at first, but my body was shifting. My chest was swelling, and my hips felt fuller, rounder. It was as if my body had started to betray me, taking on characteristics I never asked for. I didn't know whether to be terrified or amazed. The physical changes felt too much to bear, too alien. I was supposed to be a guy, right? So why did I feel like this was starting to feel, right? Then came the psychological shift. It started with the smallest moments, the way I moved, the way I thought. I noticed it in the way I interacted with people. At first, it felt awkward, like I was trapped in a role I didn't understand. But as time passed, I began to feel something inside me stir, a sense of freedom, of power. I wasn't bound by who I used to be. I wasn't held back by expectations. With every change that I fought, I felt myself unlocking new pieces of who I was. The first time I wore a dress again after the initial shock was surreal. The fabric clung to my skin in ways I wasn't used to. The softness of the fabric against my legs made me aware of every subtle movement. It was both comforting and terrifying. My reflection in the mirror didn't lie. It was all real. I wasn't imagining it. But even as I stood there, watching my body transform in ways that made my heart race, I couldn't ignore the feeling that I was starting to understand myself in ways I'd never thought possible. As the changes progressed, my mind raced with fear and fascination in equal measure. Every time I spoke, I could hear the slight shift in my voice, softer, more fluid. When I smiled, it was different, not forced or awkward but natural. I wasn't just seeing it in the mirror, I was feeling it deep inside me. The fear still lurked, gnawing at the edges of my consciousness, but there was also a sense of exhilaration, of liberation that I hadn't felt before. Yet, with every change, I could feel the weight of my choices. The more I embraced this transformation, the further I drifted from the person I once was. It felt like walking on a tightrope, balancing between the person I had been and the person I was becoming. Would I ever be able to reconcile these two versions of myself? Could I ever truly be whole again? But as I stood there, breathing deeply, I realized something. I wasn't supposed to have all the answers right now. What mattered was the journey ahead, and what I would learn along the way. It was the night of the gala, the night that had been looming over me for weeks. The transformation wasn't just physical anymore. It had seeped into every aspect of my life, and tonight, I was supposed to face it all head-on. The dress clung to my body like a second skin, the fabric soft and cool, a stark contrast to the storm of emotions that raged inside me. I stood before the mirror, staring at the reflection that barely felt like my own. But it was me, the woman in front of me was me. And for the first time in weeks, I felt the weight of that truth settle on my chest like an anchor. I wasn't sure who I was supposed to be tonight. The person who had walked into this transformation with reluctance and fear, or the person I had become, a woman in her own right, facing the world with eyes wide open. I could still hear my mother's voice in my head, her insistence that this experiment would change everything. I had always resisted the idea of this new reality, but now it felt like I had no choice but to face it. The first few moments in the ballroom were a blur. Conversations whispered, gazes shifted in my direction. I could feel the eyes of those who once knew me as their son, their friend, now looking at me with confusion, curiosity, and something else, admiration? I couldn't tell. But I felt it all. Every single gaze. It was as if I was being torn apart, piece by piece, under the weight of their stares. And then, as I took a step forward, I saw him, my best friend, Max. He was standing by the drinks table, his eyes widening as he saw me approach. My heart pounded as I closed the distance between us. "Is that really you?" His voice was a mixture of disbelief and awe, but there was something in his gaze, a flicker of something I hadn't expected, understanding. "You look amazing." I swallowed hard, suddenly overwhelmed. The tears threatened to spill over, but I pushed them down, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what's happening, Max. I don't know who I am anymore." He stepped forward, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You're still you, just more of you than before." In that moment, it hit me like a wave. I wasn't losing myself. I wasn't disappearing. I was becoming who I was always meant to be. The weight of the change, of all the doubts and fears, suddenly shifted. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was finally starting to live. But that realization didn't make everything easier. I could still feel the pang of fear, the uncertainty of what came next. The night was just beginning, and the world was watching. Would I sink, or would I rise? I didn't have all the answers yet, but for the first time in weeks, I felt the smallest spark of hope ignite deep inside me. Tonight, I was going to face my new reality, and I wasn't going to run from it. As the night wore on, I found myself more at ease. The initial shock of seeing myself in this new form, the unfamiliar sensation of walking in shoes that weren't just high but heavy with expectation, gradually faded into something more natural. The mirror no longer reflected a stranger, it was me, whole and complete. I had spent so much time trying to push away the woman I was becoming, resisting the transformation in every way I could, but tonight, I realized something crucial. Change was inevitable. But it didn't have to be something to fear. It was something to embrace. The people around me, Max, the other guests, even my mother, saw something in me I hadn't seen before. They saw strength, courage, and a quiet confidence that wasn't there before. My mother's experiment, which had seemed like a cruel twist of fate, had instead become the key to unlocking a deeper understanding of myself. I wasn't just a result of her hypnosis or her plans. I was someone who had walked through the fire and emerged, not unscathed, but with a new sense of self. I understood now that identity isn't something to be forced. It's something that evolves, shifts, and grows. It's not about fitting into a box or meeting someone else's expectations. It's about embracing who you truly are, regardless of what the world might think. As I stood in the ballroom, surrounded by familiar faces, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I wasn't just navigating a transformation anymore, I was living it. And in doing so, I realized that my journey was only just beginning. The future, uncertain as it might be, held limitless possibilities. This was no longer about survival. This was about living fully, authentically. And for the first time in a long time, I couldn't wait to see where that would take me. Thank you for joining us on another captivating journey through Zoe's stories. Remember to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a tale. Until next time, keep exploring, keep imagining, and keep believing in the magic of storytelling. See you in the next chapter.